Pelley reporting from CBS News election headquarters in New York. Good day. President Obama is about to make his first public comments on the election of Donald Trump to be his successor. They've had very harsh words for one another in the past. Trump has called Mr. Obama the worst president maybe in the history of our country. Mr. Obama has called Trump unfit to serve and woefully unprepared to be president. But early this morning, after Trump declared victory, the president called him, congratulated him, and invited him to the White House tomorrow to talk about the transition. Donald Trump will become the 45th president of the United States on January the 20th, 10 weeks from Friday. And we're looking at a live picture now. That is the door to the Oval Office, the door that opens out into the Rose Garden, where we are expecting President Obama at any moment. And as we wait for that door to swing open, let's go to John Dickerson, the anchor of Face the Nation, and our CBS News political director. John, President Obama and Donald Trump now have one thing in common. They have both defeated Hillary Clinton.
That's right. That's right. And, you know, if you think of the presidential campaigns as a kind of answer to the previous presidency, Barack Obama was sometimes described as professorial. He came into office. People talked about a post-partisan campaign that he ran. And Donald Trump has run exactly the opposite kind of campaign.
And here is the president, followed by the vice president, President Barack Obama.
Good afternoon, everybody. Yesterday, before votes were tallied, I shot a video that some of you may have seen in which I said to the American people, regardless of which side you were on in the election, regardless of whether your candidate won or lost, the sun would come up in the morning. And that is one bit of prognosticating that actually came true. The sun is up. And I know everybody had a long night. I did as well. I had a chance to talk to President-elect Trump last night, about 3:30 in the morning, I think it was, to congratulate him on winning the election. And I had a chance to invite him to come to the White House tomorrow to talk about making sure that there is a successful transition between our presidencies. Now, it is no secret that the president-elect and I have some pretty significant differences. But remember, 8 years ago, President Bush and I had some pretty significant differences. But President Bush's team could not have been more professional or more gracious in making sure we had a smooth transition so that we could hit the ground running. And one thing you realize quickly in this job is that the presidency and the vice presidency is bigger than any of us. So I have instructed my team to follow the example that President Bush's team set 8 years ago and work as hard as we can to make sure that this is a successful transition for the president-elect. Because we are now all rooting for his success in uniting and leading the country. The peaceful transition of power is one of the hallmarks of our democracy. And over the next few months, we are going to show that to the world. I also had a chance last night to speak with Secretary Clinton, and I just had a chance to hear her remarks. I could not be prouder of her. She has lived an extraordinary life of public service. She was a great First Lady. She was an outstanding senator for the state of New York. And she could not have been a better Secretary of State. I'm proud of her. A lot of Americans look up to her. Her candidacy and nomination was historic and sends a message to our daughters all across the country that they can achieve at the highest levels of politics. And I'm absolutely confident that she and President Clinton will continue to do great work for people here in the United States and all around the world. Now, everybody is sad when their side loses an election. But the day after, we have to remember that we're actually all on one team. This is an intramural scrimmage. We're not Democrats first. We're not Republicans first. We are Americans first. We're patriots first. We all want what's best for this country. That's what I heard in Mr. Trump's remarks last night. That's what I heard when I spoke to him directly, and I was heartened by that. That's what the country needs. A sense of unity, a sense of inclusion, a respect for our institutions, our way of life, rule of law, and a respect for each other. I hope that he maintains that spirit throughout this transition, and I certainly hope that's how his presidency has a chance to begin. I also told my team today to keep their heads up, because the remarkable work that they have done day in, day out, often without a lot of fanfare, often with a lot of attention, work in agencies, work in obscure areas of policy that make government run better and make it more responsive and make it more efficient and make it more service-friendly so that it's actually helping more people. That remarkable work has left the next president with a stronger, better country than the one that existed 8 years ago. So win or lose in this election, that was always our mission. That was our mission from day one. And everyone on my team should be extraordinarily proud of everything that they have done. And so should all the Americans that I've had a chance to meet all across this country, who do the hard work of building on that progress every single day. Teachers in schools, doctors in ER clinic, small businesses putting their all into starting something up, making sure they're treating their employees well. All the important work that's done by moms and dads and families and congregations in every state. The work of perfecting this union. So this was a long and hard-fought campaign. A lot of our fellow Americans are exultant today. A lot of Americans are less so. But that's the nature of campaigns. That's the nature of democracy. It is hard. And sometimes contentious and noisy. And it's not always inspiring. But to the young people who got into politics for the first time and may be disappointed by the results, I just want you to know you have to stay encouraged. Don't get cynical. Don't ever think you can't make a difference. As Secretary Clinton said this morning, fighting for what is right is worth it. Sometimes you lose an argument. Sometimes you lose an election. You know, the path that this country has taken has never been a straight line. We zig and zag, and sometimes we move in ways that some people think is forward and others think is moving back. And that's okay. I've lost elections before. Joe hasn't, but you know. So I've been sort of sharing.
You beat me badly.
That's the way politics works sometimes. We try really hard to persuade people that we're right. And then people vote. And then if we lose, we learn from our mistakes, we do some reflection, we lick our wounds, we brush ourselves off, we get back in the arena. We go at it. We try even harder the next time. The point, though, is that we all go forward with a presumption of good faith in our fellow citizens. Because that presumption of good faith is essential to a vibrant and functioning democracy. That's how this country has moved forward for 240 years. That's how we've pushed boundaries and promoted freedom around the world. That's how we've expanded the rights of our founding to reach all of our citizens. It's how we have come this far. And that's why I'm confident that this incredible journey that we're on as Americans will go on. And I'm looking forward to doing everything that I can to make sure that the next president is successful in that. I've said before, I think of this job as being a relay runner. You take the baton, you run your best race, and hopefully by the time you hand it off, you're a little further ahead. You've made a little progress. And I can say that we've done that, and I want to make sure that handoff is well executed, because ultimately we're all on the same team. All right? Thank you very much, everybody.
President Barack Obama beginning what is perhaps the single greatest obligation of any president, the peaceful transition of power, not just peaceful, but magnanimous transition of power to a political opponent. John Dickerson, we are also experiencing a very rare moment in American history. Looking at the numbers on our wall here, it appears that Hillary Clinton has lost badly in the Electoral College, but is winning at this point the popular vote, something that's only happened 4 times previously in American history, and 3 of those times were in the 19th century, and then, of course, a lot of us remember the only other time that happened, and that was in the year 2000.
That's right, and Tim Kaine, her running mate, mentioned that very early in his remarks before Hillary Clinton came out to talk to her supporters, as if to ratify her message. And there will be a lot of talk about mandates, but if the voters, more voters voted for Hillary Clinton, that's something her supporters hold on to. You know, Barack Obama talked about passing the baton not to the runner he had hoped for. But, you know, when I've talked to him, and he talks about what George W. Bush did to prepare the way for him, and to see him refer to George W. Bush and try to keep that going as kind of the last act of a presidency, to keep it smart and tidy for the next person. That is the first symbol of that transfer of power.
Margaret Brennan is an eyewitness to today's events. She's in the Rose Garden for us tonight. Margaret? Today.
Scott, just moments ago, you just heard staffers go into an extended round of applause for President Obama as he finished his remarks and walked back to the Oval Office. He really was speaking to them, a lot of them, with very sad, very red eyes today, because in many ways this election of Donald Trump is seen as a rebuke of President Obama's legacy, since Trump has called for repealing most, if not all, of President Obama's signature accomplishments, whether it's Obamacare, whether it's tearing up that nuclear deal with Iran. So this is a very emotional moment. A very large crowd gathered here in the Rose Garden, and President Obama really trying to be, I think it's fair to say, gracious in the defeat of the woman he wanted to be his successor, who he campaigned for more than any modern president in terms of really hitting the trail, vocally trying to get her to win, because he in many ways saw it as an extension of his own presidency and a way to enshrine a campaign that he had said was about hope and change. Many of those accomplishments, though, as I say, were at the center of Donald Trump's pledge to win the platform that would rebuke all of those social programs. So we will see whether Donald Trump and this transition goes as peacefully, as orderly as President Obama has called for. I thought it was notable that he said multiple times that this is about a peaceful transition of power and respect for rule of law, and said his White House staff ready to go, ready to help Donald Trump and his team hit the ground running on January 20th when he is sworn in as the next president of the United States.
Margaret Brennan, thank you very much. And the president also said that he has invited Donald Trump to the White House tomorrow. They will be shaking hands, the president of the United States shaking hands with the opponent who is committed to dismantling as much of President Obama's legacy as possible. We were just watching video of Hillary Clinton's concession speech a short time ago, and our Nancy Cordes was covering the concession speech for us today. Nancy?
Scott, Scott, Hillary Clinton tried to set an example for her supporters, saying right off the top that she had congratulated Donald Trump and promised to work with him and hoped that he would be successful. She said that we owe him an open mind and we should all give him a chance to succeed. Beyond that, it was no accident that she was wearing purple. Her husband was wearing a purple tie to show that not red, not blue America, but a united America, a united front on this day that she herself admitted is incredibly painful. And it must have been incredibly painful to give those remarks, Scott, not only because she never imagined that she would have to give those remarks, but also looking at all the faces of the aides and supporters and donors and friends in this room who were openly weeping as she spoke. Men and women who have devoted much of the past 2 years to her campaign, in some cases worked on her first campaign as well, and really thought that this was her moment, that this was the best shot that they had at getting a woman in the White House. And her message to them was not to lose the faith. I've heard so many conversations among those aides today, so dejected, saying, if Hillary Clinton can't make it to the White House, when will we have a woman in the White House? It could be decades. And she told them that they need to keep the faith and that perhaps it will happen sooner than they think.
Nancy Cordes for us tonight. Today, I should say. Not used to being on the air this early in the day when you're doing the evening news. Nancy, thank you so much. There will be much more about the election on our streaming news service, CBSN, and on a special one-hour edition of the CBS Evening News. Until then, for John Dickerson, Margaret Brennan, and Nancy Cordes, I'm Scott Pelley at CBS News Election Headquarters in New York. Good day.